Hi everyone, Tony Vlahos here, Chief Marketing Officer of ExecuNet, and I have the distinct pleasure of speaking today with Claudio Fernández-Aráoz, and he of course is Senior Advisor at the Global Executive Search firm Egon Zehnder, a world-renowned expert on identifying and developing talent, and author of the amazing new book, It's Not the How or the What, but the Who. It's a pleasure to speak to you.
Thanks very much. The pleasure is all mine, Tony.
And I am just intrigued by the title of this new book. Tell me about this title. Where did it come from? What does it mean?
The title is actually adapted from a phrase by Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO of Amazon.com. He was once asked what was the secret for his success, and basically his answer was, listen, success in life is about sequentially asking and properly responding just three types of questions. The first type of questions is about how. When he started in a garage, he was figuring how to do things. And then you say, okay, how do I get organized? How do I plan? How do I delegate? How do I control? How? But he continued, you're not going to become a billionaire by becoming 10% marginally better on the how. So the next set of questions is about the what business to be. He had the genius of introducing electronic retail to the book market, which was a brilliant idea. You enter today into Amazon.com, you find more than 10 million titles on stock. No bookstore can hold 10 million titles. And then he introduced CDs and DVDs, and Amazon today is an extremely complex company with all sorts of traditional electronic retail, but they're also in cloud computing, in media, even in space tourism. But Jeff Bezos concluded, now that I'm at the helm of this large and complex company, with the infinite possibilities of technological possibilities and consumer preferences, I am no longer smart enough, and he's very smart, to identify the most attractive words. So all my questions today are no longer about how, because I don't do the job myself. They are not even about what, because I am not smart enough. All my questions today are about
who.
Who will be the people who will help me identify the most attractive words and implement the how. So it's not the how or the what, but the who. And the subtitle tells what the book is about, which is succeed by surrounding yourself with the best.
Yes, of course. That's lovely. So are companies good at selecting the right who?
Well, there are some companies which are great at selecting the right who. Amazon is one of them. Jeff Bezos has repeatedly said that the secret for success at Amazon.com has been, is, and will always be a high hiring bar. And he was repeatedly quoted by saying that he would rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than lowering the hiring bar. So there are some companies which are amazing at that. And if you look, for example, in January last year, Harvard Business Review's cover article was about the best CEOs in the world. And if you look at the best CEOs in the world, they all are passionate at surrounding themselves with the best and helping them thrive. It applies to Jeff Bezos, it applies to Steve Jobs, who actually was the #1 CEO in the world. Jeff Bezos was #2 but #1 alive. It applies to Young from Samsung, who did this dramatic transformation, who was #2 alive. It applies to Roger Agnelli, a Brazilian grandson of a very poor immigrant in Brazil, who took a formerly state-owned mining company worth $11 billion, and in 10 years he made it worth $180 billion. His value creation was larger than that of Jack Welch per decade when leading this unlikely formerly state-owned mining company in Brazil. Why? Because he would passionately believe that the secret for success was building great teams. He would passionately believe that before making any senior appointment, he would have an objective, independent assessment of all the internal candidates with the external benchmarks. In our case, we helped him do that. He made 250 such appointments all over the world in a decade. As a result, he created this massive value. He boosted employment from 11,000 people to more than 170,000 people, including third parties. He resurrected the railroad in Brazil. He reshaped the shipping industry. He planted or preserved 3 billion trees, one for every other person in the planet. So that is what you achieve, and this is what great leaders do. They succeed by surrounding themselves with the best and helping them thrive.
That's extraordinary. I know that you are fond of potential and the potential that people bring to roles, to companies. Elaborate on that a bit. What is potential, and what is sort of the hallmarks of it that employers should look for?
Yes, so perfect. Why is potential so important? Two reasons. The first reason is that we live in this volatile world. And therefore, even if you appoint someone who has the competencies for the job itself will change very rapidly, and so that performance will be short-lived. what got you here won't even allow you to stay here if you don't have the potential, which is the ability to fundamentally change and learn and grow and continue performing at a very high level in jobs about which we have no clue today. That's the first reason why potential is so important. The second reason is that due to the combination of globalization, demographics, and pipelines, there will be a huge shortage of talent, and you cannot solve this problem by hiring from other companies. That's a zero-sum game. What one company gains, the other loses. So potential is key. We need to identify the high potentials and make a very special effort with them to retain, motivate, and develop. What are the hallmarks of potential? There are four. First, curiosity. Why is it that little children learn and change and grow so much when they are little? Because of their insatiable curiosity. They are all the time observing. They are all the time experimenting. They are all the time asking questions, getting answers, getting feedback, whether they like it or not. Now, some people remain curious throughout their whole life, and as a result become great leaders. Others lose that insatiable curiosity because of the education system and society. But that's the first hallmark. The second one, in this world with information overload, high potentials, in addition to curiosity, have great insight. They separate the wheat from the chaff, the signal from the noise. They connect the dots, they see new possibilities, and as a result, they come up with a creative vision. The next hallmark of potential then is engagement, the ability to move other people's minds and hearts towards that compelling vision. And the fourth, final hallmark of potential is determination, resilience, not cracking under pressure in this cruel, chaotic world, being able to continue striving towards these challenging objectives in good times and bad.
Amazing. So a lot of the CEOs and executives that are watching our interview today are likely in transition. They're thinking about making a change, they really need to. And they're wondering, how do I take all these great qualifications and the things that are on my resume and present them in a way that actually relates to an employer what my potential is? How would you address that question?
Yes, it's an excellent question, because if you look at the way people make people decisions, for millennia, people decisions were made on physical strength. If you wanted to erect a pyramid, dig a canal, harvest a crop, fight a war. And this unconsciously still works. You know that the average CEO in the US is 2.5 inches taller than the average executive. What does that have to do with performance? The average general is 2.5 inches taller than the average soldier. What does this have to do when wars today are pushing buttons where probably the little guy has the advantage, right? It's ridiculous, and that's why you see so many more men than women. Unconsciously this works. The second era of people decisions was because jobs were standardized based on experience, right? And this is the problem. Most people are still there, and they say, I don't hire you because you don't have the experience. Now, some more sophisticated people started looking at competence, and so they decompose a job into the required competencies to predict success, and they would appoint from within or hire from outside people with the right competency fit, which may be in different jobs. So the first recommendation to your question is to make sure that you can demonstrate that in a different job you have demonstrated these competencies. But in the end, the most successful future leaders and organizations are those who, in addition to looking for competence, look for potential. And so the first thing that you should do is watch for those leaders that believe in this. If you look at Google, for example, if you analyze the book that just came out, How Google Works, by Eric Schmidt and others, if you look chapter 5, which is on talent, you will see that intuitively they got most of these elements of potential. So go to that place, which is a place where it will also give you the right motivation to work because of the great autonomy and the great purpose that they have. And there are many other companies like this. Go to places, Amazon is another company, there are many companies though, and go to those leaders who really believe in nurturing and making the best every day better by giving them further challenges.
Do companies do an especially good job of attracting the best people with the best potential? For example, if you read the typical job description, everyone's looking for an innovative, game-changing team player, but it doesn't tell you too much about the person that they're looking for, and more than that, the potential they're seeking. Is that a fair assessment I've made?
Well, of course. I mean, I teach every year at the wonderful executive program at Harvard Business School on talent management. It's titled Driving Performance Through Talent Management. It's an exceptional one-week program attended by general managers, chief human resources officers, and chief talent officers. And every year we have an incoming class of about 60 people from 40 plus different countries from great companies. And we do a survey. But in that survey, everybody in their organizations have a high potential program and has a definition of potential. But when we ask them whether they have a robust model for assessing potential, and by this I mean a model which has been empirically validated, where after categorizing your people in low potential, medium potential, high potential, typically being low potential, someone who is not expected to be further promoted in the next 5 years. Medium potential, 1 expected promotion in the next 5 years. High potential, 2 or more expected promotions. An empirically robust, validated model is one where 5 years down the road, after you make that classification, you compare the career evolution with your assessment. So in our firm, we've developed a model that has an 85% predictive accuracy. But what we find, even in these people who attend the Harvard Business School program, is that 70 to 80% of those don't have a robust model. So they have their own definitions, which are synonyms of high potential, creative problem solvers, high achievers, whatever. But they are not assessing people properly. That's one problem. They don't have the right model. Second, they don't properly train people in assessment. And even if you have the right model, if you put a monkey to assess potential based on these criteria, you will get monkeys. And there's lots of research that shows that while the best interviewers, for example, have a great predictive accuracy, the worst interviewers are worse than flipping a coin. They are so bad that if they tell you, you know, hire that person, fire the bastard, right? And vice versa. They say, you know, Tony is useless. Retain Tony, promote Tony, increase his salary, and make him a high potential. Right? So companies should really become much better at using a reliable model and at training their people or using outside resources for assessing potential.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, and it goes something like this. What would you like everyone, especially the CEOs and the senior executives listening to us, watching us today, to know about the future of their work? What should they understand about the future of their work?
Well, the future of their work, on the one hand, has a unique opportunity. That unique opportunity is the fact that I am absolutely convinced that in the coming years, the intensity of the war for talent will be the greatest ever because of 3 factors that are increasing the demand for talent. These are globalization. Not just the fact that developed countries are trying to conquer the attractive, because of their size and growth, emerging economies. It's also the other wave of globalization, where you see these new giants from emerging economies conquering the developed world. If you look, for example, at the number of Chinese companies in the Fortune 500, 10 years ago there were only 11, now there are 88. So globalization will mean that more companies in each market are competing for talent. That will increase the demand, in my estimate, by a factor of 2 for talent in the coming years. Demographics. It has never happened before. Because of the aging of the baby boomers, you have a much lower number of people in the final sweet spot for development. The decrease over the last 6 years of people, for example, in the 35 to 45 age bracket, the absolute number of leaders has decreased by 30%. You add to a 30% decline in the number of leaders in the right age bracket, the growth in the economy, and you end up having half of the talent that you need, again, in the right age bracket. Finally, pipelines. Pipelines is the reserves of qualified successors. In the last surveys that we did at Harvard Business School, we found that the level of the pipelines has been depleted, and it's at its lowest level in many, many years that we have seen. So many companies, you find that about half of their VP plus leaders will be eligible for retirement in the next few years, and more than half of them don't have a successor ready now or ready short term. So that's the good news. Each of these factors will increase the demand for talent with the right qualification, in the right age bracket, in the right place. So there will be many more opportunities for this. Now, the bad news is that companies in general are not very good at developing talent. In a survey that was done recently at Harvard Business School with 400 companies, 37 talent practices, the worst of them all was job rotations, which is key for developing talent. So what's the solution? What's the second learning for the executives watching this show? The second learning is that you need to do it yourself. How do you do it yourself? First, by surrounding yourself with the best, by learning all the lessons in the book about what you should look for in the best people and how should you go about assessing them. Second, by helping the best thrive. By helping the best thrive, I mean by identifying the high potentials and providing them with the right development opportunities. Third, by making great teams where you really make a group of stars function at a spectacular constellation, by making sure that you have teams which are diverse, aligned, energetic, resilient, and open to the external environment. And finally, by staying and remaining curious, which is the secret for remaining young throughout your whole life and therefore productive and a very successful leader.
That's lovely. Thank you, Claudio, so much
Thank
for
you very much,
sharing your
Tony.
time and your insight. Thank
It was
you.
a big pleasure. Thank you very much.